Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This video joined me at the Lliw Reservoir in South Wales. It's my first time fishing the venue since it reopened and South Wales Society took over the fishery. I started on the far side, as you can see a few fish showing, but it's quite difficult over there. There's not much back casts, so you have to deal with not really being able to cast more than 15-20 yards. And a lot of the fish seem to be showing a bit further out. But I started on the buzzers and I was quickly into a fish. Yep, there we go. First cast on the buzzer. Ah, bastard. Just come off. Fortunately that fish did come off, but at that point I was pretty hopeful that I could continue to get fish throughout the session. However, as you'll see from the footage, I carried on fishing around that side for a good hour or two afterwards and I didn't get another take. I went over to the other side then, fished a car park swim, similar story. Started to change flies a bit, was over there for about an hour or two and I just didn't pick up anything. Sort of expecting to catch fish throughout the session, considering how many fish I'd seen rising, but I just couldn't get into them. I'm back out on the bank about 3 weeks later at the Lliw. The weather conditions this session were definitely a bit better, a bit more of a breeze on the water, and I could see the fish starting to move in a different area of the reservoir. Started off where I was fishing the previous session, but again struggling with back casting. I chose to move despite seeing a few fish rising, as you can see. I went onto the peg on the other side of the lake where the oxygenator normally is, and the fish were moving much closer in. I decided my first tactic would be straight line buzzer, hoping to pick up those fish that were moving close to the shore. It didn't take long. There we go, fish on, first cast in a straight line buzzer in the new peg, a well conditioned rainbow, taking the 0.5. A lot of the fish in the Lliw Reservoir are in mint condition and put up a great fight. Couldn't argue with the weather in this session, it was really nice. Decided to stay in that peg for a bit longer, made the most sense. I changed patterns just to see if I could get fish on something else. This time I went on to 2 cormorants, fish slow on the floating line, and I was into a fish not long after. Again, a great fight from the fish. Took line well, and I managed to get him in after a little scrap. At this point I was expecting to catch fish quite regularly in this peg. However, I did have a bit of a quiet spell after this, surprisingly. Didn't catch anything for probably about an hour or two. It was here then that I decided to make a change to smaller buzzers. I moved up the bank slightly, so I could see a few fish rising just a bit further down. 2 small buzzers deployed out there at pretty much my maximum casting range in this particular peg, and as usual, it didn't take long. Just watching the line here, you'll see it tightening up. There we go, fish on. Probably put the best fight up of the day, which is usually the case for fish you catch on natural flies. They tend to be more resident fish, feeding hard on the natural fly larvae in the lake, and you pretty much see that in the fight. I scoop him up after a good 2 to 3 minute fight, and as you can see from the footage, he's a very well proportioned fish. Off to fight another day, until he gets caught on a worm by another angler and then knocked on the head. After that fish on the buzzer, it went quiet again, and as the sun rose higher in the sky, the fish definitely dropped. There weren't as many rising, but I decided to deploy a dive 5 line and 2 blobs, just seeing if I could pick any stocky fish up deeper down in the water column. I did manage to pick up a lovely rainbow here on the blob. Just went onto the dive 5 line, straight into a fish first cast. Let's get back out. Here I am, casting back out into my patch of water in front of this swim, hoping to pick up a few more fish. It didn't actually happen in that swim, and as the bank anglers further up from me left, I managed to go into their water and fish an area that had been producing fish for most of the day. In this particular spot, I was straight into a few fish. Unfortunately, I did miss the first couple. As you'll see here, the fish actually took me straight on the drop. And as you'll see from my reaction, I wasn't
fish on.
best pleased about this.
Yes! Oh, it's off.
However, not long after,
Bastard.
2 blobs again, because they seemed to be working well for me. I managed to pick up another fish on a very slow retrieve. Another nice fish, put up a great fight. Clearly, probably one of their stockies, not a resident of the lake, I wouldn't have thought. But as usual, a stunning fish, and slipped back there, gone off strong to fight another day. I'm back now from my 3rd day's fishing on the Lliw. Weather conditions this session weren't brilliant. There was quite a strong northeasterly wind blowing down the reservoir, and the sun was quite high in the sky. However, it didn't put me off, and when I arrived I was the only angler in the lake. I started off on the car park swim, hoping to pick up one of the fresh fish that usually run along the dam wall. However, I couldn't get anything there for the first half an hour, so I decided to move in to the swim with that water feature. Stuck to the same tactics, started off pulling. I had a 3 cast setup on, booby on the point, cormorant on the middle dropper, and a blob on the top dropper. I was quickly into a fish, casting towards that flow. However, as you can see from the footage, I did lose it. At this stage, I decided to drop down the line. I started on the dive 5 line, but I couldn't pick anything up, so I thought, with the sun and that cold wind, that the fish were likely to be quite deep. I went onto the dive 7 with a 30-second count, changed up to a pink booby, and I was into a fish within 5 casts.
Yep, fish on.
I was hoping, finding this tactic, that I would be able to catch a few fish. Now I had sort of worked out what sort of depth they were sitting at. Goes to show just how deep the water is in front of you at the Lliw Reservoir. That was a 30-second count with a dive 7 sinking line. Nowhere near the bottom. Nice fish to open the session with.
Absolutely.
Engulf the booby.
Stunning fish.
And you get a nice release of it.
Lovely. First one of the day. Been a tough start, but perhaps we found the winning tactic, the winning depth.
With that first fish came a bit of a flurry of activity. I was getting pulls and bangs quite regularly on nearly every cast, and did start to regularly pick up fish.
Yep, there's a fish.
Throughout the day, the fish sort of stayed at that depth, very deep, but that water feature you have on this particular peg is definitely somewhere you should be looking to fish. That added oxygen in the water definitely draws the fish to this area, and if you can present your flies or your worm or your bait in and around that bubbling oxygenated water, you will definitely pick up fish.
Straight through the middle of that float.
Here I am experimenting with a bit of a slower retrieve on a figure of 8, and I'm into a fish straight away. Unfortunately, that one did come off, but I continued to fish that area, mixing up the retrieves, staying on the exact same flies because I was picking up fish consistently, and I did in the end manage to pick up 6 on this method.
Is there any fish in there? Yep. Right there.
I continued to pick fish up for a little period after that initial flurry. However, it did eventually quieten down, but here's a compilation of some of the takes that I had during that afternoon.
Nice rainbow there. Oh, bastard. Oh, fuck.
After landing this last rainbow here on the pull-in line, it did go quiet, and as the cloud cover increased, I decided then it'd be a good time to go on a tip line and start fishing some natural flies. I chose a 3-fly cast with a dalbach, a buzzer and a pheasant tail nymph. I was pretty much straight into a fish in this method, so it just highlighted that the fish completely switched off the pull-in line and were now looking for more natural food. I went on to pick up 2 more fish after this first one, but after that I decided to end the session. Yeah, lovely fish. I'm just taking on the buzzer. Probably the best fish I've had at the lake since I started fishing it. It's been perfect. That's the end of the video there. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I hope you look forward to the next video. Bye bye.